Good morning. Buenos dias. I originally was going to walk around as opposed to standing at the podium, but a phrase that we use in the United States, Dr. Gamis Paruk is a hard act to follow. So therefore, I'm going to stay here. But if I may, his presentation was fantastic, and I'd like to give him the applause that he so richly deserves. Thank you so much for bringing that type of passion and energy into this meeting. And I'd also be remiss if I did not thank my colleague Raul for that kind introduction, Dr. Palacios for the invitation and the organizing committee. It is truly an honor to be here. And I very much appreciate the opportunity to be with you in this wonderful venue. What I'm going to do is I'm going to be talking about, and if I could have the slides on the screen, please, that would be helpful. But I'm going to talk about what the private sector can do. And I'm not going to talk, even though prior to going to the Coca-Cola company in 2004, I worked for the industry, the food and beverage industry as a whole. I'm going to focus in, of course, on the Coca-Cola company, that which I know best, in terms of what can be done collectively, not just from the industry perspective, but very important that we continue to work together to try to address this very serious issue that we're having within our younger population, but in the population as a whole. And I am thrilled to hear so often during this meeting the importance of working together. I have a lot to cover. I'll be rather quick. I have a tendency to speak very fast. So I will be looking at the translator. If I go too fast, raise your hand and I will slow down, because I know how difficult that must be. I'm also privileged through the magic of information technology to have 4 experts that we are privileged to work with at the Coca-Cola company here via video to give you more of an in-depth discussion and detail in terms of what they do as it relates to helping advance active, healthy living across the population globally. But the agenda, the current state, I will go quickly over the current state. You've heard from the experts, including but not limited, Dr. Cole, Dr. Brown, others, and you will after me with Dr. Archer, in terms of the issues that we're facing with this very, very difficult and complex issue called overweight and obesity. And then I'm going to go into how we're looking at it as a company through our sustainability framework, what we call me, we, in the world. And then I'll get into what our strategies are, what our tactics are in terms of campaigns, collaborations and partnerships, and communications. And as you've heard before, and as you will hear now, communications, motivating people, is the most challenging barrier that we have in terms of what more can we do to have those messages, to have the data that we've seen resonate with the public to make a difference in terms of their lifestyles, in terms of their actions that they need to take. And then finally, a wrap-up in terms of my final thoughts as it relates to inform, involve, and inspire. So on the next slide, what you have is basically the obesity situation, and we are all aligned. It's not as if industry is somewhere on the sidelines not wanting to be part. The Coca-Cola company, from the commentary made by Francisco Crespo, Presidente de Coca-Cola de Mexico, yesterday, making it very clear, we want to be part of the solution, and we can't do it ourselves. We must work across all sectors, including government and civil society, because only together can we truly make that difference, because it is complex, it is serious, it is a growing problem, and we know it's linked to a variety of chronic diseases, it's costly, and not only from the basis of money, but in terms of self-esteem, self-worth, and yes, happiness in terms of our children and our populations as a whole. And it undermines health and well-being. And as was mentioned, it is a global pandemic. And I will echo the words of Dr. Cole. It's not only obesity being in and of itself a global pandemic, but so is physical inactivity. A relatively recent publication in Lancet highlighted again the enormity of the situation, the fact that it's continuing to grow across the globe. And when you read the study, the basic point that continues to come out, yes, it's serious, yes, it's complex, yes, it's growing, but the fact that we have to have urgent global action and leadership to address this very, very complex issue. And it's not just one group, and it's just not one solution. It's amazing sometimes when I go to a variety of professional meetings, both within the government and within professional societies, and I always hear about these easy fixes. And as we all know, regardless of what sector you're in, whether it's in the scientific world, whether it's in the business world, whether it's in the education world, we know easy answers aren't right. In the case of obesity, the right answer isn't easy. So that's why we have to work together. And again, just showing pictures, it's very difficult in terms of the enormity of the situation. And it's nothing we have a situation right now, I believe globally, I know we sure do in the United States, where we're blaming the victim. And I use victim in quotes. And we're trying to use shame and embarrassment to solve the situation. And that only hurts people's feelings, but it also results in them pulling back. There was recent study in terms of interviews that were done with people who are classified as overweight and obese in terms of, and looking at the population across the board, but there was a focus on overweight and obese in terms of doctors. And out of all the different cohorts in our population, overweight and obese change doctors more often than any other subset. And do you know why? It's because they feel the stigma. They feel the judgment. Whether it's there, whether it's intentional, I doubt if it is on the part of physicians, at least I'm hoping that's the case, but they feel that. So we have to work together, we have to try to help, but using shame and blame is not an answer. I'm now going to move very quickly in terms of how we at the Coca-Cola Company, through our sustainability, I'm now in the Office of Sustainability, look at health across the board. And we basically have 3 areas of focus: women, water, and well-being. It falls into our framework, which is about me, we, and the world. Me is well-being. And to echo the comments of our previous speaker, we look at well-being in the 3 areas that he identified: the physical, the emotional, and the spiritual. When we move from the community into our own workforce, we add a 4th, that being financial, because we know financial problems can cause stress and impact the well-being emotionally, and then it's physical in terms of our employees, so we add a 4th. When we look at we're looking basically at the community at large. However, even a company like Coca-Cola, when we need to focus, we focus on the woman. Why? Because we know that when she is empowered, particularly from an economic perspective, she gets healthier, her children get healthier. And as I like to say, when we collectively fell from the trees, women became gatherers, men became hunters. And what women do is we gather in our sisters from the community. And when we gather our sisters and help them become economically empowered, it also helps their children in the community at large. We also know if that anything happens to the woman, the family has a tendency to disintegrate. So we do have a focus on women. And lastly, the world. It's not as if we don't care about packaging. Of course we do. We care about climate change. We care about our carbon footprint. But water next to oxygen is a highly valuable nutrient. So we also focus in on water. What I'm going to do right now is in terms of looking at well-being. I discussed very quickly how we look at it: body, mind, spirit, physical, emotional, social. But we also know that well-being starts with energy balance, and it starts with a healthy energy balance. And we'd be remiss if we didn't also add that it also needs to ensure that one has an active, healthy lifestyle. I'm hoping what I'm saying today resonates with what you heard yesterday and also this morning. It's because the industry and the private sector, it's not as if we have a plan that is better than yours, better than what's in academia, in the government. But what we're trying to do is we're trying to have that 360 approach, you know, that communications that continue to go around where we repeat messages that have evidence, and what we like to say is in the scientific world, proof of concept, to try to drive those changes. Because the more people hear, and it's not just the facts, but the more we converse on these types of issues, the higher the probability that they're going to resonate. And they're going to be resulting in lifestyle changes that become everyday. When we look at active, healthy lifestyles, and this goes back to when I first came to the Coca-Cola Company in 2004, we looked at it from the perspective of education, variety, and physical activity. And because we know too many syllables sometimes are turned off by the public, we basically use think, drink, and move. Let me go very quickly over education and think. We want people to be mindful. Absolutely, we want people to be mindful. And if they're not in a healthy energy balance, I'll move to variety. We want to have a beverage for every lifestyle and occasion for that individual, because our commitment to the consumer is providing a variety of beverages to meet their lifestyle needs. And then, of course, we have to have physical activity. I'll get to this in a minute in terms of one of the campaigns that we help support, Exercise is Medicine, but you heard it today. It is no doubt the best medicine we have, but how do we get people to engage? So think, drink, and move, and when you look at it, it's all about, at the end of the day, energy balance. And again, I emphasize healthy energy balance. Okay, moving on. How are we going to help people in terms of energy balance? So we have 4 commitments. We've had these 4 commitments for some time. For lack of a better term, I'm going to say that we codified them last year in May 2013 in terms of making it public, in terms of what we were doing. And the first one that we focus in on is having calorie options. We want to make sure that we have a low and no calorie option available for consumers to make that choice. We can't talk about energy balance if we don't provide the tools, not only the information, but the opportunities to purchase and enjoy those products. So throughout our over 200 markets, 207 markets to date, we're going to make sure that we allow for that type of mindful choosing as it relates to our products. And we have 3,500 products worldwide, over 500 brands. Over 25% of them currently across the board globally are low and no calorie. One of the biggest barriers we have is that people think those sweeteners are unsafe, despite the evidence. And this is what's going to get when I come to communications, the importance of communications, because it's not just beating people over the head with facts. I use as an analogy for that, my husband's a communications engineer. When he talks to me about microwaves, I kind of get a blank look as it relates to communications. So what does he do? He talks louder, as if by raising the decibel level, I'm going to understand even better what he already knows. No, we have to have conversations, and we have to do it in such a way that it touches the consumer's heart, not just their head. Because we know that when our hearts are touched, it makes a difference in what we do and how we plan and what our lifestyles are going to be. Secondly, we have to make sure that we have transparent information. I talked earlier again about education. How are consumers going to know what the calorie content of our products are if we don't tell them? And yes, we have it on the back of the pack. We have it in the Nutrition Facts panel, but we have made a commitment to pull that information to the front of pack, to make it as easy as possible for the consumer to know what the calorie content is. And it's not just putting a number up there. That's not enough. We have to explain, and when I say we, I'm using the royal we have to explain what that means. You know, again, it's like I'll take people out of the nutrition world, out of the medical world, out of the health pro world. That's like trying to explain BTUs on an air conditioner to a fifth grader. You have to give them, you know, valuable information that provides context to those numbers. We've gone as far as to make sure that it's not just based on a serving, but it's based on a package. And it's not that consumers are innumerate or they don't know how to add, subtract, divide, multiply. They're busy. They are absolutely busy, and we want to make it as easy as possible for them. The third one is to make sure that we are doing the holistic focus on active, healthy living, continuing to raise the awareness on physical activity and its benefits. And it's not just the Coca-Cola company, but it's through third parties, expert organizations, and through conferences like this, where hopefully there are journalists and opportunities to share the information. And please, I encourage you, I was just talking to my colleague as it relates to putting all this information out there, whether it's on YouTube, whether it's on the internet, but share that information. I just asked her, what's the hashtag? Because I want to tweet this. I want people to know. Put it on your Facebook. Make sure your friends and your family, your neighbors, the people you attend church with, know about the importance of physical activity. But it's not just knowing about physical activity and its benefits. We have to also provide opportunities for people to be active, whether it's in the schools, and I applaud the program that's being done. Absolutely, and I applaud those countries who have physical activity as part and parcel of the education process. We currently don't do that in the United States. And then we want to know, why are our kids naughty in schools? Because they're fidgeting all the time. And why aren't their scores as high as they can be? So hopefully there will be differences and changes coming along. And last but not least, we do not market directly to kids under the age of 12. And as I go to these meetings, people will say, well, I don't consider, over 12 to be youth or a preteen. I still think they're children. We do know from the data that have been developed, the evidence that is there, that by the age of 12, children can differentiate. So we do not market directly to children under 12. And we've had that as a policy for some time. We are beginning now to make it very clear, because we have found that if we don't share our information, others speak on our behalf. And whether intentionally or not, their views of what we do and what we don't do are not necessarily correct. So we're going to be more vocal in that area. So our well-being strategy falls into 3 pillars. Number 1, inform. We want to make sure that we provide people with the facts, but the facts in such a way that resonate. I always like to say, take those facts, lace them with emotion, and then converse with the public. Talking about their health and well-being is not necessarily like teaching chemistry to a 101 class. You have to have a conversation. You have to get to the heart. We also want to make sure that we're involving the system. The system can be the Coca-Cola system, over 700,000 employees worldwide, which includes our bottlers. But the system also includes the communities. We have to involve the communities. Again, I can't emphasize enough. One company, one sector cannot solve this situation and cannot solve the problem by itself. And last but not least, the most difficult, and I think you heard that from Dr. Brown and others yesterday, to inspire, to motivate people to act. Act in a positive way. Act to speak up. Act to do. To motivate people to do the right thing. So, now I'm going to get into our tactics in terms of how we feel we can help in terms of solving this very wicked problem of unhealthfulness, not being, not having the necessary well-being, reducing overweight, reducing obesity. We work through campaigns, we work through collaborations, we work through communications. I'm going to start with campaigns, giving you two, talking about exercise as medicine and talking about the Foro International Network. Let's start off with exercise as medicine. And basically, because the data are overwhelming, and I'll go as far as to say irrefutable, even though sometimes when I go to a professional meeting, I have people who will come up to me and say, exercise isn't what you're telling people. I said, I'm not telling people, I'm just sharing the evidence with you. So when you find the evidence where exercise does not help better than any other drug or pharmaceutical out there, then let's sit down and talk. But for now, I'm basing my decision on all the good work that has been done by the experts out there as it relates to evidence. And this is the same thing as it relates to the American College of Sports Medicine and the American Medical Association. Exercise as medicine is basically designed to make exercise, physical activity, a vital sign when you go to your doctor or a health professional, be it a dietitian, a physio, but to make sure that you're being asked about your behavior in terms of physical activity. One of the things that we were doing initially, and when I say we, I want to be very clear that I'm talking about the experts. I happen to use the royal we. Again, Coca-Cola, it's like the wind beneath their wings. We help support them, but it's very much their program, their design, their collective genius. But we were focusing more on how many countries we could be in, as opposed to what's the impact from the doctor's perspective and then the patient's perspective. So we're beginning to change when we do our metrics, and metrics are very important because what isn't measured isn't done. But it's not just how many countries exercise as medicine is in, how many doctors and health professionals are they touching, and how many people are those health professionals impacting in terms of having physical activity as part and parcel of their lifestyle, the lifestyle of their families, the lifestyle of their children, becomes second nature. I'm going to introduce you to the first expert who's doing a phenomenal job in terms of training doctors and health professionals. Dr. John Duperly is based in Colombia, but has done a lot of work throughout Latin America in terms of raising the awareness and doing the necessary training. If I could have the first video, please.
There is a lot to do about your health besides medication and surgeries and expensive interventions. Exercise medicine is a nice, big initiative of the American College of Sports Medicine, trying to bring the science of sports and physical activity and its relationship with health, the clinical practice to doctors, hospitals, and patients. This project is trying to bring that information down to real life and health practice. We identified the problem that the amount of doctors that really are experts in sports medicine or exercise physiology is a very small number compared to what we need. We have trained at this moment almost 2,000 doctors, most of them in Colombia, Venezuela, Mexico. We designed a small workshop, a course, 8-hour course that interested doctors can take. We see them practicing exercise. They have to do exercise themselves. It is not just to give the knowledge to physicians, but also give practical tools to ask a patient, are you active or not, and to prescribe exercise. If someone took this small course, has the evidence in his head, has a toolkit of material, can ask about physical activity and give a basic recommendation. At this moment, we are facing the next challenge, that is, how are we going to help these doctors to implement this in their offices? Patient and community have to demand this from their doctors.
Exercise is medicine. And again, focusing in on the health professionals and the doctors because they are a very important sector in our communities. And what can I say? When people have a white coat on, there's a tendency for the public to listen. So very, very positive. I'm now going to move to EPODE International Network. And again, I have another video to help explain what EPODE is. But very, very quickly, it's basically an organization, an NGO, that's focused on the reduction and prevention of childhood obesity within the community. It's based on community-based programs, working in public-private partnerships. Dr. Jean-Michel Boris started this over 20 years ago in a small town in France and demonstrated that when you work together within a community with a focus on healthy diets, physical activity, and healthy behaviors, you can make a difference. You absolutely can make a difference. These are just some of the partners that he works with, that EPODE International Network works with across the board. And the reason this resonated with the Coca-Cola Company, and the reason we were the first founding partner of the EPODE International Network, and again, there's EPODE European Network, and then there's the International Network, is because they believe in what we believe in. And I assume, and I hope correctly, what all of you believe in. We can't do it by ourselves. Lord knows the industry can't do it by itself. The government alone, nor can civil society. We have to work together. And this is what we call the Golden Triangle. And it's no surprise that it is the strongest geometric figure there is. And whether at some point in time civil society is at the base, or whether it's the government at the base or industry at the base, it makes no difference. We have a saying in the Coca-Cola Company, just imagine how far you can go. If you don't worry who gets the credit. So it doesn't make any difference, as long as we're all driving towards the same goal. What I'd like to do right now is run the next video, if I may, if you can, please, in terms of explaining the EPODE International Network.
During the last 30 years, the number of overweight people has steadily increased, with more than 1.4 billion overweight adults worldwide, and far too many children are affected. Something has to change. At EPODE International Network, we're doing what we can to tackle obesity. How? By bringing all sectors together to support local programs that help children and the community adopt healthier lifestyles, including healthy eating, active play, and a good night's sleep. The scientific, private, and public sectors are all mobilized to support these programs. And it's working. In Europe alone, we have managed to help reduce childhood obesity. In pilot towns in Belgium by 22%, and in pilot towns in France by 10%. Since its creation in 2011, EPODE International Network has grown drastically, with over 30 program members in over 20 countries, reaching over 200 million people across the world. 14 of these programs are based in Europe, including Via Sano, which works to change the local environment and behaviour of children and families in Belgium, making a healthy, active lifestyle the norm. And Jog, which brings together parents, healthcare professionals, companies and schools in 14 provinces in the Netherlands to help young people maintain a healthy weight. But our work doesn't stop there. Our latest project will see us work with even more programs in Europe to reach even more communities by 2016, aiming to reach 3.9 million people. If we're to prevent obesity, we must work together. For more information and to sign up to our newsletter, visit our website.
And I'd like to offer, if anyone would like to use these videos, translate them or interpret them at the bottom with a voice, either voiceover or with words, by all means. This is all information available on YouTube. Absolutely. Okay, let me go into collaborations. I call collaborations and not necessarily research, even though I'm going to share with you 2 research programs that we help support, because it's indeed a collaboration. And what is Coca-Cola's role? We ask a question, we request, that it be, an international study or focus on, a variety, a good subset of the population, a randomized sample. But other than that, once the experts design the study, and what we like to say, field it, we step back. It's not our study. We have enough concerns and criticism in terms of conflict of interest and what some say undue influence. So we make it very clear this is their research, but they need funding. Researchers need funding. Our governments cannot provide them with all the money that's needed to address all the questions that are being asked. So I'm going to share with you 2 studies, the first one being the International Study of Childhood Obesity, Lifestyle and the Environment, ISCOLE. There were comments that were made both today and yesterday as it relates to, can you apply something that's being done in America and assume it's going to work in Mexico? I have a background in food safety, and I like to use food safety plans and food safety programs as an example. And one of the biggest advances, I would say, in food safety has to do with what we call HACCP, Hazard Analysis Critical Control Points. What are those hazards? What are the critical control points, and what are the interventions you have to apply? And it's applied to different sectors. But when you're looking at a HACCP program or a food safety program in the dairy sector, can you apply that same program to what's done in a canned facility, or a soup facility, or a beef facility? No, because the environment is different. The matrix is different. And I, in no way, shape, or form, are trying to reduce countries to a food plant. But if you're trying to use an intervention or a solution that works in one country, where the cultural and the environmental differences are apparent in another country, I don't know how that's going to be successful. So one of the things that we asked when this was being designed is, can you determine what those factors are? And the only thing the Coca-Cola company requested is that they go big or they go home. We limited it to 12 sectors, 12 international sites, more, of course, but we were just starting out. They were just starting out. I use the royal we, I apologize. In terms of getting the necessary information. So let me quickly go through this. The aim, of course, was to identify the relationships with lifestyle and lifestyle behaviors and the environment in a multinational study of children. There were 12 different sites all over the world. And we basically said we wanted to have at least one site in the 5 geographies that we operate in. So Latin America, North America, Europe, Africa, Eurasia, and Asia Pacific. They looked at a number of, it is not, I'll be honest, it's very data intense, rivaling Ponte, but but not to that extreme. But a lot of data looking at the environment, whether it was the household environment, the school environment, the neighborhood, socioeconomic status to get the demographics, looking at the diet, looking at physical activity with accelerometers that not only collected data on activity, but also sleep. And then trying to get those measures in regards to adiposity to have a better understanding of what was occurring. 10-year-olds were the target. The power calculations determined that we needed at least 500 per country, or at least an N of 6,000. A number of countries went beyond that to get as much data as they could. And the sampling frame included a range, as I mentioned, of socioeconomic status endpoints within each country. What I'd like to do right now is ask Dr. Peter Kaczmarczyk to share, but I just want to show you in terms of what we make sure, because of transparency, is on every study that's presented that we have helped to support, but also in the public literature. And again, the study sponsor has no role in study design, data collection, analysis, conclusions, or publications. One of the things that we do in terms of being transparent, what did we insist on? We insisted on that the study be global in nature. We asked the question, please make sure when you're designing it, be international, and that was it. So let me just turn the next video, please, and Dr. Kaczmarczyk will explain ISCOLE.
We have different dietary practices in different countries. We also have different physical activity practices. So in some areas, it's viewed as a good thing socially to be physically active and be physically fit. In some regions of the world, it's not. If you're viewed riding your bicycle or doing physical activity, you may be perceived negatively because you don't have the economic resources to own a car. We're leading a study called the International Study of Childhood Obesity, Lifestyle, and the Environment. We call it ISCOLE. And the purpose of this study is to look at the lifestyle characteristics and how they may apply to obesity, how they're correlated with obesity, how they may predict obesity. And it's all around the world. We're in 12 different countries, 12 different cultures, and 12 different communities around the world. But the key feature about ISCOLE is that we're measuring the environment. So the ultimate goal is really to try to develop interventions where we can impact childhood obesity. But we can't take an intervention developed in the United States or developed in Canada or Australia and just plunk it down in Kenya and think that it's going to work. For example, in the United States, television viewing has been linked to childhood obesity. So it might make sense to have an intervention to reduce television viewing. But if in Kenya or in South Africa or India, if TV viewing is not related to obesity, then why would you intervene on it? So we've run some preliminary analysis, and it's very interesting that, around the world, the relationships which we see in America don't always stand up in other countries. And I think that's going to be a major point of this study. That in the United States, those of us with higher socioeconomic status have lower rates of obesity than those with a lower socioeconomic status. However, if you move to Kenya, it's completely flipped. It's those with a higher socioeconomic status have higher levels of obesity. And we need to take that into account and try to develop interventions. We're learning about their cultures. We're learning why the prevalence of obesity is so low in Kenya or so low in Bogota, Colombia, and that's what we need to understand. What are they doing right, and what are we doing wrong? So, there's never been a study like this that can really get at these root causes of obesity. So I really think that what we're going to learn from this ISCOLE will allow us to adapt interventions to be deployed throughout the world. And I really truly believe we'll have an impact.
Okay, so that's ISCOLE. And again, if there are any questions post this presentation, I'll be here today, I'll be here tonight, and a little bit tomorrow if anyone has any questions. I'm now going to move on in terms of something that we feel very passionate about, and that is building capacities in country. Capabilities and capacities in country. Because we want to make sure the countries in which we operate, and as I mentioned, 207, have the necessary infrastructure and have the necessary expertise to help their populations. Because their populations are also our employees, and their families, and our consumers, and our public at large. So one of the programs that we have, we worked with the CDC Foundation, and the focus was lower and middle income countries, primarily in Latin America and India. We've had requests for others, and again, it isn't us. We provide the money to the Centers for Disease Control, their foundation, and they then provide the monies to the necessary experts. It's not only Dr. Michael Pratt from CDC, but it's others in terms of people that he has identified in terms of building that capacity. And what we have found, and this is the project description, where we bring the trainees, we bring the future leaders to either CDC or Emory to get trained. Generally, they'll get a master's or a PhD, and then they go home and they train the trainers. And it's a virtuous cycle in terms of making sure that they have the abilities to care and understand their populations and make the right decisions and advance health. And again, this particular project was on NCD prevention with a focus on physical activity. And what have we found? Phenomenal in terms of there's such a pull for this program, and we just need to do more. And it's not just the Coca-Cola company. We've now instituted this in ILSI, the International Life Sciences Institute, to help with a fund in terms of allowing this to happen. But one of the other things that has come out of it, it's not just a leveraging of resources in terms of people have a tendency to think resources are only money. It's the collective genius that occurs when people look at a problem through their eyes in a different way and helping to develop truly workable solutions that are going to make a difference in their population. Absolutely phenomenal. Let me move on to energy balance. This is a study that we've been supporting for over 3 years. It's out of the University of South Carolina. Specific questions, I'm happy that Ed Archer is here. Even though he's currently at the University of Alabama, he worked on this and can provide you with detailed answers. But the bottom line is on this one, we know there's a stable drive to eat. Biologically, we like to eat. I always tell people I'm like a turtle. You feed me, and I want to go in the sun and turn on my back. And that's what I want to do. I'm not programmed to be active. I make myself be active. I do enjoy activity, but it's something that I'm programmed to eat. But I need to make sure I'm mindful about what I eat and also about my activity. And this is just a cartoon that shows when we fell from the trees, we were high energy intake, high energy expenditure, but we have engineered out basically physical activity, a point that Dr. Cole was making very, very clear yesterday. So the aim of the study was to better understand energy dynamics. One of the criticisms that I get when I go and speak publicly is the fact that, oh, you make it too easy. You just say it's calories in, calories out. You always say, eat less, move more. And one of the things that we're finding is it's again, to quote Harry Potter, it's complicated. It really is complicated because there's a number of energy balance components that make the model very complex. It's not just eating and moving. There's all these activities that are going through your system. It's a system process that we have to look at. And this is just one model from the experts in terms of how complicated it is. This is not a scale, calories in, calories out. I like to have that balance. Very complicated. But one of the things in terms of listening to these experts and hearing them present is that some of the take-home messages are basically, next slide please, is the fact that being sedentary, next slide please, and starving won't work. So if you see that nice thin person, whether it's a male or a female, and you think, oh my gosh, look how healthy. Really? Are they subsisting in terms of what they're taking in and not moving? That's not healthy. We know that's not healthy. And having a weight stability with low expenditure, that requires, if you're not going to move, you have a little bit of food that you're going to take in. That's also not healthy. Not when you need to work that machine. So strategies to combat obesity should focus on energy flux. And again, I'm like a clairvoyant right now. They're speaking through me in terms of their expertise and the expertise in this room. It's about energy flux. Those calories that are going through a system, rather than what we have been saying for such a long time, that it's just a matter of a scale. that it's a balance. So what I'd like to do is turn this over to Dr. Greg Hand, the principal investigator for this study.
Energy balance has been talked about since the 1950s, and we still don't really understand how energy balance works. We still don't understand after all these years why it is that people eat the way they do and why they act the way they do. The energy balance equation is often thought of in terms of energy intake minus energy expenditure equals energy storage. What that means is if you take the amount of food that you eat and you subtract out the amount of energy that's expended during the day through your basic metabolic activity, your physical activity, what's left over will be stored. We don't have to go do all of the labor-intensive things we did 100 years ago, but we still have to eat because that's our biology. And to try and be a sedentary person, to have 10 to 12 hours of screen time every day, mostly at work, and then try and match your caloric intake to that very low expenditure is just not biologically feasible for most people over a long period of time. And that's why diets fail. So the idea of energy balance is that energy intake and expenditure, if they're the same through most of the days, over time your weight won't change significantly. The energy balance study has been going on for 2 years. We completed the first year. We're currently in the second year. And so this study is an observational study that was designed to follow a population of young adults who are going through significant changes in their lives, ages 21 to about 37. We're not actually having them do anything. There's no intervention. And the purpose is to try and tease out what it is that's causing people to change weight. We saw that the people who lost weight over the first year consumed fewer calories than they expended. They expended a higher level of calories than they consumed, and people gaining weight did just the opposite. They consumed more calories than they expended. I think with the findings that have come out of the first year of energy balance, we have a lot of work to do, and we have a responsibility to try and change the conversation. The message should be that you have to increase expenditure. You have to maintain a high energy expenditure so that you can offset that energy expenditure by eating enough so that you aren't simply starving all the time. Because that is not a situation that's sustainable for a while.
And we're trying more and more to get the term energy balance popularized. So if you were on Twitter or you go to Facebook, if you hashtag energy balance, you'll be able to see it because we're trying to raise the awareness in terms of what that actually means. Okay, I've talked to you about what the private sector is doing with a focus on Coca-Cola as it relates to campaigns, collaborations, which are basically research and works that we do in terms of working together with other folks, but primarily in terms of the research activities. The most challenging area right now is communications. How do you get the consumer to believe and accept what we like to say, move their fears to faith and make a difference in terms of their particular lifestyle? I'm going to move quickly to the Beverage Institute. I heard, my Spanish isn't that good, but I heard Raul talk about the Beverage Institute for Health and Wellness. The work that is being done here with the satellite that they have in Mexico is phenomenal and continuing to grow. Our corporate site, and we have 9 additional satellites throughout the world, has continued to grow. It's basically focused on health professionals. The information is there. Over 92% of the content on the Beverage Institute for Health and Wellness website is third-party expert. Not ours, not our information. We don't brand on this site. It's strictly focused on the health professional as it relates to the safety of ingredients, the role of beverages, the role of various other health and wellness information is substantiated by science, and the value and the need for an active, healthy lifestyle. Over 2.2 million hits. We're very proud of the fact that out of all the consumer good websites that are out there with a focus on food and beverage, we're rated #1. This is an Alexa score, and it's kind of like golf. The lower the score, the better you are. The #1 site, and you probably can guess it, is Google. It's #1. Even though we're 198,000 plus, our colleagues in the food industry are lower, or higher, I should say. So we have the highest Alexa rating, and we're very proud of that, and we're very proud of the awards we won, because to the extent that we can convince people, it's basically the science. It's not it is the science that we provide. And through this, we also provide WebExes, webinars, continuing education credits, generally done during the lunch hour, to make it easier for health professionals to get the latest and the quote-unquote greatest as it relates to the necessary information they need, whether it's the latest on sweeteners, whether it's how to increase motivation in your patients or your clients. Quite a lot of information, and I encourage all of you to look at the Beverage Institute for Health and Wellness websites. We're also continuing to be constructively discontent. This is a term coined by our chairman, and we follow it all the time. For us to be satisfied with status quo is not the way to go. It's like the dinosaur. So we're constructively discontent, and with our Beverage Institute for Health and Wellness, we're moving from, and I don't mean to minimalize this, but moving from just a resource for the health professional to more and more trying to be a dynamic, overarching platform with consumer facing. And we're using a number of our opportunities within the company and elsewhere in terms of getting information out in a way that resonates, again, whether it's with millennials, the elder population, the baby boomers like I am, in terms of making it easier, what we would call snackable information, to either make them want more or to start raising their awareness as to what needs to be done. In addition to what we do from our websites and internal, we also are thrilled to be part and parcel of conferences. So I can't thank again the organizers for providing this opportunity to share the information, not just from Coca-Cola or what I'm talking about with the private sector, but the wealth of information, the richness of the data and the information that was shared during these past 2 days is phenomenal. But this is a way, and again, it's not for Coca-Cola to go out, but it's for us to provide the opportunities for third-party experts to attend these regional, global meetings. And as all of you know who fly, it is not cheap. So again, their story, their data, the venue is there to raise awareness. We also share a lot with the variety of media. This is key. And it's not just the classical media, the TV, even though that's very important. I am a TV watcher, a news watcher. I also read newspapers. I'm a Neanderthal. At Coca-Cola, I am basically a cave person. But also in terms of what we need to do on Twitter, Facebook. And I just want to mention ShareWick. These are the videos that ShareWick has done. It stands for Share What I Know, ShareWick. Because what they have looked at is the fact that in terms of, she's a reporter, the woman who runs this is a former reporter, news reporter, and she has found that if you can combine expert view and opinion with consumer real-life situation, that really makes a difference. And when she takes a variety of topics, whether it's energy balance, and she has become a believer on energy balance and a believer on physical activity. And from a health standpoint, that is wonderful to have that type of passion and purpose on the part of a journalist. But what she has found is if you can combine expert opinion with that consumer facing, that consumer experience, it really makes a difference. Because it's through that consumer that the person who's watching hears what the experts are saying. And it's a phenomenal model, and we're continuing to help support through unrestricted grants her work and what she's trying to do. So I'm going to come to the summary here and now the conclusion. I've talked quite a bit, but I hope what I've done today has explained to you what the private sector, again, looking at the Coca-Cola company, what we feel are important to try to make a difference in terms of the health and well-being of the public across the board. We talked about the importance of information, having that information. And the importance of not only taking that information, but making sure that we're involving a system, whether that's within a company or whether that's within the community, whether that's across the world, involving them to make the necessary actions, take the necessary actions, and finally, to inspire, to motivate them to act on the information that they're hearing because they understand it, it's touching their heart, it's resonating. And through that, we use our 3 tactics. whether we're working on campaigns or helping to support campaigns, whether it's working through collaborations with experts in the field, whether they be in civil society or government, and then lastly through communications. I'm going to close with a video that was just produced by Sherwick, where they're using both the experts' opinions, but you're also going to hear from consumers. And with that, I'll be happy to answer questions that you might have afterwards during the break or during today's reception. So if you can run the last video, please, and thank you for your attention.
We have a major health problem with obesity. But the very definition of a problem creates the need for solutions.
There's one thing we know that works for maintaining quality of life, and that is being physically active.
So how are we going to get people to move when in fact being sedentary is very attractive?
We still don't really understand how energy balance works. We still don't understand after all these years why it is that people eat the way they do and why they act the way they do.
There is no way around it. We all need to exercise and exercise more.
Our whole lives are structured in ways to make it difficult for us to be physically active.
We had an industrial revolution, and then we had a computer revolution. Each of those reduced our need to expend energy during the day.
I thought, well, how hard can this be? It's just walking on a treadmill. And it was so physically painful at first, I thought I was not going to be able to do it.
I was so tired, and I thought, God, I'll never be able to do this. But I kept going.
And truly, it was no magic potion, no magic pill. It truly was eating healthy meals and exercising regularly.
If you go to your doctor's office for the first time, you will almost certainly be asked, do you smoke? But more often than not, you likely will not be asked about how much physical activity you do.
I can't think of a better therapeutic strategy for just about any disease we have today than increasing physical activity combined with a healthful diet.
I think I was running one day, and one of the young ladies said, Regina, you're about to lose your pants, because I kept having to pull them up. And I thought, oh my God, I'm losing weight.
Didn't put 100 pounds on in one day, and it was not gonna come off in one day. As long as I set those small goals and I met them, I felt like I was successful.
Do not be afraid to go to the gym because you feel bigger or fatter than everyone else there. Because I did that too. And I went and I kept going. And then eventually you're going to be one of those people that you look up to, and someone's going to look up to you.
I never knew that you could buy alternative foods to canned goods or, fresh foods instead of sliced lunch meat or packaged food.
Research from a lot of different corners of the world is starting to shine some light on this area.
So we need to discover what is really causing this epidemic, and we really need good data, and that's what our Energy Balance Project is designed to do.
As Ralph Paffenbarger, one of the pioneers in the field, used to say, it's not the years that you add to your life that are important, but the life that you add to your years. And isn't it great that exercise adds both years to your life as well as life to your years?
Again, thank you.